waiting for one more panelist. Let me just get started and introduce myself. My name is Richard Johnson. I'm a market structure and fintech analyst at Greenwich Associates, where we look a lot at emerging technologies and their adoption within financial services.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Darko, the CEO of Causalens. We are a London-based startup. We automate machine learning for time series predictions. That's a mouthful. So what that means, it's like building a virtual data scientist that does one thing and does one thing very well, that builds automatically predictive models for time series.
Yeah, hi, I'm James Aylward, part of Fidelity Labs, and we have an artificial intelligence incubator looking at opportunities for high-impact use cases for artificial intelligence across Fidelity and even into new products and new customer segments.
Hi. Hello. Yeah. Hi, I'm Paul Nimerovski. I'm CEO and co-founder of Dimetrics. We are a firm based in New York. We automate reading. So we are used by large banks, hedge funds, pharma companies to read massive amounts of data, mostly in compliance or wealth management or some other use cases. And really the premise is that most people want to spend their time doing interpretation of the data rather than the manual reading. And machines today can do what data scientists spend 90% of their time doing, massaging data. So you don't really need to spend their time on that. You can do it yourself.
Great. So as I mentioned, at Greenwich Associates, we look at a sentiment in the market towards new technologies and trends within financial services. And I just want to kind of get a sense of the audience we're dealing with here. If you're in financial services and you've currently deployed AI in a production use case, can you put your hand up, please? OK. Next question. I hope you guys have. Next question. If you're in financial services and are planning to deploy AI into production within the next 1 to 2 years, put your hands up. Okay, so that's encouraging. Certainly we see, it's reflected in some of the data we see, which I've got here. This is from a study of about 117 financial services professionals. About 18% have already implemented AI in some way, but 57% are looking to do it in the next 12 months. So if we look out from there, what that means is that in 12 months' time, 75% of financial services will have implemented AI. Maybe there's some optimism built into that, but certainly a lot of people are planning to move forward with it. And also, we asked people about what do you see the benefits of as AI in your business? And by large majorities, people see that there are going to be benefits with respect to productivity, towards productivity benefits, financial benefits as they feed down into the bottom line. And also, when you have AI technology hooked into your business processes, you can also get a lot better management information. So that's it, just 2 slides. We've come a long way in AI in the last 5 years, and as we see, we're going to have a lot more people adopting it in the next 12 to 24 months. Can you guys tell us about what kind of technologies you're seeing now and are being implemented now, and what do you expect to be implemented within the next 5 years?
Yeah, I can start. Probably the biggest visible one we have at Fidelity is when you call into our call centers. We're using natural language processing to understand why you've called into Fidelity. And we capture what we call a whisper, which is, hey, why are you here today? The customer says, I'm here to potentially save for my child's future and think about college. And we pick up on a few words within that phrase, identify that college has been mentioned, and then get you to the right group within the Fidelity call center and cut down on handoffs, and also customer satisfaction goes up. That's a really big and visible, externally facing one for natural language processing, and AI is a big basket of different mathematical methods. So that's one that's customer facing. But on the other side, we heard from Chris Lynn this morning about, hey, we want to turn over a whole bunch of rocks, right, to be able to identify opportunities in order to help secure investment outcomes. And that's where the sort of technologies that you two bring to the table come in. Is like, how do we get through all that data to identify the biggest opportunities and bring that to our humans to augment their professional talent with the best opportunities that we can find from a systematic viewpoint. And that's what AI enables us to unlock.
For us, I think, ultimately things haven't changed because there is AI. People either are concerned about risk or about revenue, one or the other. So people come to us and ask for solutions that will improve them on either of these. So a lot of use cases that we see are on the wealth management side, trying to analyze better all the contents of their notes, all the kinds of things that help them invest better, all the ways to filter the incoming data stream, be it news or earnings calls or whatever. So that's on one end. And on the other end is this huge machinery that has been created in banks in particular that has to minimize risk. So there we work with corporate trust departments, people like that just need to read massive amounts of information. Sometimes this information is something very historical. Sometimes it's something that comes all the time, like we work with a couple stock exchanges. But I think the premise is the same. It hasn't changed. It's about people figuring out how can I contribute my unique view and interpretation into a problem that I had before, but have machines help me.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, people always want to do the things that matter for business. It just turns out that machines tend to be better at certain things and humans tend to be better at other things. So from our perspective, we've seen people using artificial intelligence where there is a huge need to eliminate cognitive biases that are embedded in the human decision-making process. So if you're trying, for example, to make a prediction about the future, and I'm by the way very biased here, that's because that's all we do, machines in a lot of cases can do a great job, especially in high-dimensional data spaces where humans have naturally not evolved to understand. So naturally we see a lot of need and demand for AI on the prediction side. So anyone that wants to optimize a business process, be that in finance or outside, and want to get a little bit of a glimpse of the future, machine learning and artificial intelligence is particularly powerful on this, given the right set of input data, of course. Let's not forget, AI is not magic. It's still maths at the end of the day.
And I just want to dig in a bit more on what are we looking forward to. I think so many of the advancements in AI have come over the last 5 or 6 years as graphical processing units have got better and faster. There's more data out there. There's more availability of cloud and so forth. So what are we going to be doing in 5 years' time? What's the exciting stuff to look forward to in finance, anyway?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to what are the customer needs and opportunities out there to identify what we might bring to the table 5 years from now. When we started the artificial intelligence incubator at Fidelity Labs, we went out and spoke literally in living rooms with customers and families to identify what their concerns were, what their pain points were. Particularly in that study, it was about families who have just had children, so they're working out the trade-off between how do I handle daycare, does one of the spouses stay home, or there's a whole bunch of different financial planning opportunities there. So if we think about 5 years from now, can we really tailor and really personalize the financial investment experience to the exact needs of those families? How do we get to, we've talked about it from marketing as a segment of one, but really it's about an experience that matches and tailors directly to that family's needs. How do we provide the wisdom and guidance of sort of 70 years of experience to help families get through these challenges in the most optimal way? And I think that the personalization that AI techniques allow for is where we'll be in 5 to 6, 7 years' time.
So I think, Darko, you mentioned that AI doesn't have any biases that people do. Can an AI make better decisions for a family than the family can themselves?
Well, I think we really still believe that humans have an input to make when it comes to, what do you feed the machine in terms of data. So, you could have still implicit biases, but the idea is that the machine should be able to filter out those biases for you. But I think ultimately most decision-making systems are going to involve some human interaction at some part of the process. I mean, theoretically we can let autopilot fly planes at the moment, but we still have a pilot there just in case things go wrong. And I can really see any AI-driven product will have some sort of a pilot there that observes it. But of course, the scale might be different. You might have one person observing, a large number of decision-making systems. But I think the biggest trend that we will see when it comes to artificial intelligence is the automation of it. I don't think we'll be sitting here in 5 years' time and talking, we will not have an AI panel. It's just not going to exist. It's going to be...
We have a robot panel?
It's going to be all automated away, and every single one of you here will be able to access, cutting-edge AI intelligence at the click of a button.
Yeah, please.
No, so I think that's really kind of the future, ultimately, of AI. We're all going to be thinking about where do we put it in, how do we build products, they utilize it, but we're not going to be thinking about how do we do it. The machine will learn by itself how to build its own brain.
I would somewhat disagree because, by way of background, my PhD is in machine learning. I've worked exactly 0 days in a bank. I have never done any trading. And yet when I come and meet with our clients, they expect that I will teach them how to do all of these things that they have spent their entire life doing. And I think it's a bit of insanity. It doesn't align with the reality. I can give them the tool to interpret something. So I think there's only two ways that I personally look at AI. It's I know best or you know best. And I think what we see now is a lot of systems that say, I know best, I will automate, I will do this, I will solve the problem for you so you don't need to think, because frankly you don't know, I know best. I think 5 years from now we will move much more into systems where they can integrate your opinions, your takes, your interpretations in real time and make intelligent judgment on that. But what emerges from that is effectively your view amplified by the machine, not vice versa.
That's right. I mean, I totally agree with you. It's essentially a function of what you allow the machine to see. The machine can only learn based on observations. And I think humans have a great role to play in deciding what to let the machine observe.
Yeah, I think the really exciting stuff's going to come when domain experts who've been in the field doing whatever they do for 20, 25 years really start to pick up and understand some of the power of artificial intelligence and deep learning, and it becomes real to them. As close as we can get to bringing those techniques to domain experts, so it's just another tool in the toolkit. That's when we're going to see some really amazing stuff come out of deep learning in financial services, but just more broadly, just in industry in general. How can we close that gap between the understanding of the skill set and the understanding of the domain expertise?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the only way to achieve that is to automate machine learning to a level that the domain users or the experts can use it directly without relying on a large data science team that sits probably in another building or across, in a different country. And shorten this loop between domain experts and AI. This is the only way we will see it kind of used to its true potential.
Yeah, you used to need a mathematician to run a spreadsheet, right? I mean, in the 70s and 80s, but now you don't, and that's what's going to happen. So
bringing it back to today, and we've certainly got more than a handful of firms in the audience who are looking to deploy AI. What advice do you have for them? What expertise is needed in-house? There's a lot of off-the-shelf products now. I think, Paul, you have some of these out there in the market. What should people be doing? Do they still need a team of data scientists? They need a team of computer scientists? What's the next steps for these guys?
I mean, I can shed some light based on our real-world experience. And what has worked really well at the present time is when a company hires a small and effective team of data scientists, and then they leverage on the technology that is out there, and that can work, really, really well. For example, our product, automates the prediction on time series. We do not see that everyone should be building this kind of individually in each organization. It has taken us, a good couple of years with a team of 10 to build. So it's about leveraging on what is out there and kind of solving the business need. So you still need some translators in the process, but you don't need very large data science teams.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's a small team. It doesn't, I mean, the first thing people say is, hey, we need a data scientist. Yes, you need a data scientist at some point, but what are you trying to do? And it's really about identifying that use case or that customer need, or looking at that business process that you're trying to move forward. And my strong advice is just to get started somewhere. I've seen with teams do a small little use case, and then the understanding kicks in, the imagination starts happening. They want more data scientists, but they also, and one word of caution here is not just the data scientists too. It's just the same as any product development. It's product people, it's designers who understand the capabilities of data science, and it's also executive sponsorship and championship throughout the organization to provide investment for something that is by its very nature a little bit speculative, right? So artificial intelligence, deep learning is all about a probabilistic outcome. It's the same with the project itself. As you're developing the project to try and build a new product, you'll open a data set and you'll find that you can't do things that you thought you could. And then you'll find also in the data set that you can do things that you hadn't even thought about when you started. So getting started is the key. And that can be anywhere with a whole bunch of different off-the-shelf packages, or it could be a bespoke system built by data science. It really depends on a use case, but have that use case identified and go for that.
Yeah, I would imagine who's going to... Not sure. No, can you hear me? No. All right. I think that the words data scientist will have the same cachet 5 years from now as the word hypertext is today. You go on your browser and you click a link. You did not just experience hypertext. You don't think about it. So I think everybody, as you mentioned, today we use Excel. That doesn't make you a computer scientist. Same here. It will blend in. So I think the skills that you will need in people 5 years from now are skills that you needed in them 15 years ago, which is people who know how to ask the right questions, who know to interpret what matters to you, who know how to develop an original hypothesis, and these are the people that you will need today and tomorrow. I don't believe that technology conquers all. If you do, I highly recommend going to New York Times archive and going to the 70s and limiting your search to the 70s and typing the words neural networks. It's enlightening.
So, we talked a bit about moving to a stage where, AI is like HTML, or AI is like electricity. What's going to be the competitive advantage when we live in a world where there's abundant AI and everyone has access to the same kind of machine learning tools and algorithms?
Yeah, I see it. There's two advantages in my mind. One is access to data. So what data do we have that competitors don't have, and can you build that into a competitive advantage and be a sustaining competitive advantage? We just heard from the last panel about different data sources. So that's one. And the other one is, it's imagination and the willingness to try stuff. It is how quickly can we get through that build and learn loop in order to see what these products can produce. So when you think about the emergence of the web, and again we look back at analogies from past tech waves, it took 5 or 6 years for Google to be built after the emergence of the internet, right? So that's where I see this wave of AI at the moment. I feel like there's a whole bunch of different products and different techniques and use cases out there, but nobody's really pulled it together. It's similar to like the iPhone. Just before the iPhone came out, we had camera phones, we had different elements of the iPhone, but they hadn't been put together. And in what we do, I have to talk to a whole bunch of different vendors to pull together a production machine learning model. I think eventually that's all going to come together, and we'll see a huge amount of impact out of that.
Yeah, I would say that when I go to clients, some of them are very proficient and aware. Some have a giant alphabet soup of all the machine learning buzzwords, and they've engaged with 17 vendors, and they cannot really understand what's going on. And a lot of that is because the priorities and clear data specifications and outcomes have not been set. It's more like fascination and fear of the new thing that is coming. So that to me is something that needs to somehow get solved.
Yeah, I mean, people need to learn what you can and cannot do with artificial intelligence. So, really, you cannot generalize. You do need to have used it enough times to develop the kind of the gut feel on which it's whether you decide whether it's worth the shot or not. You'll still not won't know until you have tried it, but at least you'll have a good chance of knowing what use case might work and might not work. In terms of competitive advantage, to go back to your question, let's not forget there's a lot of corporations that they're sitting on private data that no one else can see. So if they have the ability to deploy efficiently machine learning on that data, they might be able to derive competitive advantage that no one else has. And our technology is involved in some of those use cases at the moment, which leads to direct competitive advantage on private data. When it comes to private data, there might be some new business model that emerge, but I guess that's not the topic here. So.
Yeah, I would just add to that if you look at large organizations today in financial sector, there is usually this many people that understand something about machine learning, all that, and then there is the organization. And I think the organizations that will win are the ones that will use the right tool to spread that use across.
And we were actually surprised to see large financial institutions setting up like academies for essentially training their less tech-savvy employees, how to deploy AI within their daily process. And I think that, we believe that's the right way forward. Starts with education and knowledge first. And it has to be a kind of an organization-wide approach for it to be successful. Yeah,
well, I think that kind of analogy applies today, where a product manager doesn't need to be a developer, but he needs to know what is capable using the tools that his team has. And I think the same is going to apply with AI. When we were having the call before this, I can't remember if you, Darko, or you, Paul, mentioned a scenario that you come across where where an AI was looking at 400 or so data sets, then the portfolio manager came in and was that you want to tell the audience about that one?
It's an interesting story. People assume that you can just throw a lot of data at the machine and then the machine will miraculously find, the best predictive model or whatever you're trying to do. So we had an interesting example where we had one of our customers, throwing hundreds of different time series, a lot of data points, and saying, hey, why don't you build the best possible predictive model on this data? So we let our machine do the job. It did a lot of optimization for hours and hours, and a half-decent model came out automatically. We then repeated the process after with the human touch, where our customer reduced the number of time series from 400 to 5 or 10, and we repeated the same process in a fully autonomous way, and then the machine was able to find a much better predictive model automatically. So that was a clear proof that humans still have a big role to play in this process.
Yeah, that's definitely encouraging. I think we often hear a couple of different stories about how AI will impact the workforce, and a lot of people say it's an augmenting technology, as the story you've told, which is very encouraging. But you also get a lot of people on the other side saying, oh, it's hundreds of thousands of jobs are going to disappear. I'd like to get your take on where that is. Maybe start with you, Paul.
I think that jobs will morph. I think that again, not to bring New York Times twice in the same spiel, but if you look at the introduction of the car in New York City around 1898, I think the first car was on the roads, and there are all these articles about what is going to happen to all the people that maintain the horses. And, they're right, but the amount of people that facilitate the driving experience, the riding experience, the moving from part to part has increased manifold. It's the same here. Take a very simple example. If someone writes online that Apple will buy Samsung for $10, is that good, bad? Is it going to happen? Not. That's your interpretation. That is not going to disappear. It will increase manifold, and situations that you'll be able to evaluate are far more complex, and therefore you need many more people to give many more interpretations to have this granular decision making.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, we often think about it in terms of, instead of job roles being eliminated, if you will, it's more about job tasks and what tasks within those job roles can be automated. There's a great Planet Money podcast that I encourage people to listen to about the introduction of spreadsheets, similar to the introduction of cars, I guess. But a lot of concern there that we'd lose a lot of bookkeepers, and in fact, the number of bookkeepers did go down, but the number of accountants went through the roof. And that's because you could do so much more with a spreadsheet than you could with a paper ledger. So this whole profession of you know, accounting really picked up, and finance really picked up after the introduction of the spreadsheet. With, you know, with AI and data analysis and data science, we're seeing roles that didn't exist, you know, 4 or 5 years ago that financial services companies and others are aggressively pursuing right now.
Before you answer, Darko, I want to play devil's advocate here, and we're talking about roles morphing. And you gave an automobile example, Paul. You know, there's another example that springs to mind, which is Uber, and we all know they're working hard to have self-driving cars. How does an Uber driver morph into a new role when his car is self-driving? Anyone?
Difficult question, that one. But I think automation, I'll answer this question to a bit more generic you know, answer. But I think automation is about creating levels of abstraction. And this is how humanity progresses. If I had to, you know, stay at home and make my own bread this morning, I wouldn't be able to be here and, you know, share ideas with incredible people. You know, so by automating things, we're able to move higher up, you know, as humanity, and we're able to, you know, go to Mars and do all this funky stuff that we wouldn't be able to do if we didn't automate things. You know, automating machine learning, or you know, machine learning is kind of automating software engineering essentially, and it's yet another, you know, way to automate things. But by doing that, we're liberating ourselves to do more and invent new things. And I think I have big faith in humanity. I think we are incredibly intelligent and incredibly innovative. So I'm pretty sure we'll find things that we cannot even imagine of today that will create new jobs in the future, but we'll only be able to do that if we automate the old jobs.
Yeah.
Okay. Very positive answer, Paul.
I think, to take your Uber example, you know, it's not only that the cars will become automated. For instance, probably the interior of the car and the experience in the car will change as well. So, you know, who is going to entertain you while you're in the car? Is there a role of car entertainer? Is there all kinds of expanses in the world of fashion and music and whatnot that we cannot think today about, just like we couldn't think about the role of the gas station attendant back then. And, you know, people who developed the entire infrastructure of where you could suddenly drive and how you could explore parts of the country that triggered then development in these parts of the country. So same type of impact waves, I think, will affect. Now, it's not a straight line, and it's not always the use case of accountants shooting through the roofs. It can be a jiggling out line, but I believe that it invariably happens because we are curious creatures and we are bad at sitting idly.
Okay, so we're getting near the end. I think it's probably going to be the last question. Each of you, can you just tell me what is the biggest challenge you're facing now as you try and deploy AI technology?
I would just say, you know, for us, it's the understanding of the technology and its capabilities. So it's about bringing up everyone kind of at speed with what is possible and what is not. So I think there's a lot of buzzwords being thrown around, but very little in the way of, you know, step-by-step education.
I think for me it's the data. So we have lots of great data sets, but those data sets at the moment were really not built for building machine learning models from. They were built for operational reasons, or they were built not really with artificial intelligence in mind at all. And you know, 80% of you know, a product development lifecycle when it comes to AI is often spent grooming and manipulating the data into a way that makes sense for the AI. So, you know, that's a big challenge for us. And I think in the future, people will be building collecting and harvesting data to enable some of these machine learning products, and that will again speed up that loop through the innovation cycle.
So one thing that I would add to this point is if anyone wants to make a multi-billion-dollar startup, focus on creating training data sets. It's something that is very much lacking, especially in everything that has to do with natural language processing, which my company works on. The other part, I think the biggest challenge we are facing is that we work with very large companies that have regulations that haven't kept with the times. For example, the fact that most companies want to do on-prem deployments and the world has moved to the cloud, things like that. So it just will have to move.
Great, and we'll end with that. We've got some entrepreneurs in the room, so maybe they'll take you up on the training data idea. Thanks to our panelists. Thank you very much.